Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 689 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ailon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our ninth book just came out. It's called From Letters to Leaders, The Legacy of Service. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, we love working with Gen Z because they are so motivated. That being said, it is a very difficult task for Gen Z to get jobs right now with little to no experience because many CEOs are just not hiring at the moment. They're waiting to see what happens with AI, what jobs could be outsourced to AI, and they're making big investments with their dollars in artificial intelligence, and that just leaves fewer dollars for a lot of entry-level positions. So Gen Z is competing for very few entry-level job openings. And I know this because my kids are Gen Z and they're looking for work. So I totally get it. And our next guest has so many suggestions for you to get the insider strategies you need in order to thrive in your early career. Ellen Raim is a former chief human resources officer at global companies. She sat in rooms where decisions about early career talent gets made. She knows what executives think, reviewing performance, what makes someone promotable versus overlooked, all of those unwritten rules because Ellen helped to write them. As an employment attorney with 10 years of practice, Ellen understands workplace dynamics from compliance and risk perspective. And more importantly, she knows how to help you navigate difficult situations without vulnerable position. So as somebody who is now spending years working exclusively with Gen Z professionals, Ellen understands unique challenges that Gen Z faces. This isn't your parents' workforce. Rules have changed, expectations are different today, and the path to success is just less clear. So let's talk to Ellen in order to get some clarity. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
Thank you very, very much for having me.
Hey, it is my pleasure. Anytime you want to talk about Gen Z and jobs, you have a spot on this show because honestly, I can't think of a more important topic right now in the minds of college students. So I certainly appreciate what you do and the fact that you're willing to give back to them. I think that's just phenomenal. And, just looking at your resume, you spent 20 years as an HR executive. So what are the biggest mistakes that you're seeing college graduates make during their first year on the job?
Okay. So I think that it's really, really important for graduates to understand that school and work operate by different rules. So when you're in school, after, so many years in school, the cues on how achievement is measured, how it works, and what you can do to be the best. But in the workplace, those rules are really different, and the success markers look different. So one of the most important things to know is that at school, you study for a test, you take the test, it's very personal. But at work, one of the things that is people don't really realize is that much of success is intertwined with other people's work. And so you have to learn how to do that. And another thing that's really important in the workplace is in the majority of companies, managers are judged on their business results, not on how well they manage. So unlike your professors and the people around you in academia who are invested in your success, managers are judged on their business results, not on your success. And they've not been trained all the time on how to help you grow and thrive. So you're going to have to determine what success looks like for you in your workplace and build your own plan to get it a lot of the time.
That's a great answer. And I think that's an important lesson for college students. We're talking about business results. So what does that mean as a college student? On your resume, highlight those business results. Talk about percentages,
Yep.
dollars raised in your philanthropy, and the percent that you reduce uncollectible accounts in your accounts receivable. Whatever. I mean, just put in numbers and data that shows those business results that Ellen is talking about. And she's also talking about teamwork it's no longer a solo play. She's talking about what results you get as a team, which is why fraternities and sorority members, I feel like they have a really big advantage because they have been working as a team as opposed to kind of this lone wolf, in college. And so I think those skills and working with a lot of different people than you are certainly going to come in handy, I think, in the workforce, especially as we're looking at like intergenerational teams.
Right, 100% agree, 100% agree. And you have a huge leg up if you've been in Greek life because of all of the things that you just said, Mike. Uh, it's incumbent upon people to figure out how to write that in a resume and how to speak about that in an interview because you do have a leg up and you want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, totally. I really like your book, and I think it's something that all of our listeners should pick up. It's called Play the Game: Insider Strategies to Thrive in Your Early Career. Why did you decide to write this book, Play the Game?
So play the game is my translation between what schools teach and what leaders expect. So let me give you a little bit more history there. In the 50s, places like IBM, they actually had an algorithm that they would use to figure out who was going to retire and who might leave, so who they would promote, and that then how many college grads they would hire from the bottom. And they had really extensive training programs on leadership and business skills so that every cohort was ready to move up. But it was, and that's why people stayed for like 30 years and then they got their gold watch when they retired. But it was very expensive. And so in the 80s, when the finance folks decided that that was too expensive, organizations went to a different model, which is I'll hire college students for potential and then I'll let them figure it out themselves. And the research around that shows that it takes about 8 months to 2 years to get fully productive if you do it that way. And today, like you said, because of like AI and the fast pace of the world, even that is now becoming something that companies are saying they can't tolerate. And so I know what it was like for me when I first got out of college, out of law school, actually, and had my first job. I was bumping into walls, and I wanted to give young folks as much of a head start as possible so that they could get into work and shine early because the stakes are higher than they were when I was coming up. And that's what the book does. It's kind of a how-to. It translates some of those unwritten expectations that workplaces have, but they don't necessarily tell you about. And you don't get them until you've actually worked a little bit.
Totally. One of the things that I never learned in college was what a CRM actually is, this customer relationship management tool. And it's something that a lot of companies use, even entrepreneurial companies, in order to make sales from their clients, et cetera. And I'm like, how come nobody's like teaching this, how to run a business? I mean, it's like, this is like, the entry ticket in order to run a business. You can't really do it without it, but it's something that the university's never taught. So even balancing a checkbook. I mean, these are things that I feel like nobody's learning in college, but they're skills that are needed. So, what do employers expect from these new graduates that maybe colleges are not teaching right now?
Okay, so before I answer this question, or in order to answer this question, let me talk about who the leaders are and what makes them tick. So most of the leaders are Gen X. So like me, Gen X we grew up without the internet, without cell phones, without bike helmets, without organized play dates. Toys didn't have labels. We were unsupervised, and I know my parents just said, go outside and play and come home when the street lights come on. And so nobody could find you because you didn't have a cell phone. There was literally a public service announcement that came on at 10 o'clock at night that said, parents, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? So we learned really, really early how to take care of ourselves. And I think the most important lesson that we learned was grace under pressure and how to figure things out ourselves. Because if you got lost or hurt, nobody could help you. I mean, you couldn't be Find My Friends on your phone. You could go to like a gas station and then maybe they would help you or knock on somebody's door, but you had to figure it out yourself. And also, we were raised by very strictly, and so we didn't share our feelings. We just sucked it up and toughed it out, and that also shaped us. But we grew up in a time where we knew that if we worked hard and we put in the time and we didn't question authority, we would climb the corporate ladder and we'd be able to have, what they call the American dream, a good salary, a house, a couple of kids, a dog, a few vacations. Um, so it makes sense that Gen X, who are the leaders now at work, have become accustomed to people who can have self-direction, can solve problems by themselves without a lot of coaching, that people will follow the rules, and that will give them upward mobility. So they wait their turn to be promoted. And people that leave their feelings and their personal problems at the door. And those things are kind of different from the way that Gen Z is approaching work. So consciously or unconsciously, the leadership wants to hire people who approach work the same way that they approach work. So I tell early career folks to become students of the way that leadership thinks. So to pay attention to what they praise and what they reward, what they trust. And the faster you can understand how your company's leadership defines value, the faster you can adopt some of those things or build enough trust to advocate for something different, and the faster you'll shine.
That's really great. And I'm Gen X, so I completely agree with your assessment of today's business leaders. It's exactly how they grew up and what they're looking for from college students who are coming into the workforce. You also talk about these unwritten rules of the workplace. Can you give us a couple of examples that every student should know before they graduate from college?
Sure. So, number one, your boss has a boss too. And you can make your boss feel great about his relationship with his own boss if he feels great about you. So, you need to look for ways to show your boss that he or she can trust your judgment and your work product. So, trust, having your boss trust you, building trust with your boss, number one rule before even your skill set. Because if your boss trusts you, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you make a mistake or you don't know how to do something. So, the second unwritten rule, you got hired because your company or your hiring manager had a specific need. That means your boss is expecting you to solve the problems that they have. So if your boss gives you work, don't just rotely focus on like what he said to do. Think about the task and figure out what's the problem that your boss really has that giving you this thing is going to solve for them. And try to solve that problem, not just do exactly the words that came out of their mouth. Now, some people call this taking initiative. Taking initiative is a really loaded phrase these days, but it really is just about problem solving. So if you think of what you're being asked to do, kind of like in a little bigger context, then you will shine, you will outshine the other people around you. And along the same lines, like unwritten rule number three, if you can't figure out an answer, don't just hand the problem back to your boss. Go in and say to them, this is what I think we should do. I can't figure it out. Or do you agree with me? Or where do I find the information to do this thing that I'm stuck on? And this shows your boss that you're thinking and that you are owning the problem. And then you'll have a conversation. So instead of them thinking you don't know what you're doing, they'll be thinking, look, we're interacting and we're solving the problem together. So those are my three.
That's a great answer. And if you want to like rewind and listen to that again, I think it'd be worth your time. I'm just saying. The other thing that I think about with all these fraternity and sorority members that are listening right now, they're probably struggling to figure out how they can articulate the value of that fraternity or sorority experience during a job interview without just sounding generic, right? I mean, maybe a generic answer about my fraternity is that I served as treasurer. So how would you articulate the value of that experience during a job interview?
So again, this is so important. This is such a huge leg up. And when I help young folks write their resumes, I just see this added on the bottom, like as extra skills or leadership or something. It is, if you were a leader in your fraternity, bring it up to the top of the resume. But what's important to do when you do this is you have to explain it as why what you did would make a difference to a company. So what is what's the value or the impact of your role in the fraternity? And it's not just you had a leadership role. It can be the philanthropic work you did. It can even be helping your brothers and sisters with problems that they had, as long as you can describe it as why it would make a difference to a company. So uh, budgets, if you're the treasurer, budgets that were managed, conflicts that were resolved, events that you planned and ran shows that you can handle all kinds of uh, activities that are pertinent to work, um, but put the measurable impact down. So that's my advice on how to bring this to the forefront. But please don't, it wasn't just, I guess I want to say, please don't ignore it. It wasn't just like a fun thing you did in college. It really is building your skills. And nowadays, companies are looking for young folks who can start with some skills. And the more you can show them, the better chances you have.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, sometimes I will review a resume of somebody who was in a fraternity or sorority or is in a fraternity or sorority. I should correct myself. And, and they leave it out of their resume. It's
Mhm.
completely gone. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know for a fact you were in a sorority. Why are you leaving this out? And then they're coming up with a million excuses. Well, I don't know, what their thought is. And I'm like, this is a leadership experience.
Exactly, absolutely. And you would be surprised how many people in the workforce have been in Greek life.
Right.
So if you put it there, it's another like commonality you can have with somebody.
Totally. And when I'm reviewing a resume and I find out they're in another sorority or fraternity, or maybe they're in the same fraternity, I mean, dumb luck could that be with 120,000 members of my fraternity? And so, when that happens, I instantly have a hook. We instantly have the same core values, and there is a hook that I can talk to you about things that I know you're going to get. You're going to
Yeah.
understand. And that's all we're looking for in an interview situation. What is that hook between us? That's it.
Right, absolutely. Because in an interview, you're trying to build, you're trying to build a relationship as well as express what you're good at and what you bring to the table. But there's also a piece of hiring somebody that's about, would I like to work with this person? And so when you start with some commonality, it makes the interview go so much better.
Totally. The other thing you've seen, I'm sure, thousands of resumes in your day. What resume mistakes immediately move that candidate into the no pile?
Huh. Okay. So a negative question. So companies used to hire for potential. They now hire even folks right out of college if for professional skills and their experience. So if your resume just lists tasks without explaining what you've done that might be useful in a workplace, it's going to go in the no pile. It's not going to stand out in any way. It's not showing your value. It doesn't show the so what of what you've done. So you need to add not only your skills, but what they've what the impact or the measure of those activities are. And it doesn't have to just come from a job. So I've worked with many students who are either elite athletes, and so they're training all the time, so they haven't had internships or a lot of summer jobs, or engineers who take 5 years to get through a program, and so they haven't had great jobs. But things like capstone projects or clubs or volunteer work or even tutoring that you've done, if you can put that on a resume and it shows up as the so what for a business, you'll keep yourself out of the no pile.
That is very, very helpful. I appreciate that. The other thing that I wonder about too is that I see a lot of Gen Z students applying online for a lot of jobs, and I totally get that. But obviously, the response rate in today's market can be smaller than maybe what you and I experienced. So my question is networking still more important to you right now than applying online?
So I could just say yes, full stop. But let me give you some more like flesh on the bones of that answer. The last statistic that I read said that average online application is getting between 100 and 500 responses because it is very easy. Like if you go on LinkedIn, you just click easy apply and it sends your resume. So uh, If you just apply online, that's like playing the slot machines in Las Vegas. It's almost impossible. And you read stuff all the time about people saying, I applied for 1,200 jobs online. Well, yeah, stop applying just by jobs. It reminds me of somebody sitting and just pulling the lever on a slot machine. The other thing is because of AI, and people are using AI to help write their resumes or tailor their resumes, recruiters tell me that hundreds of applications look nearly identical on paper. So they are hungry for something to pull somebody out of the pack, something to differentiate somebody in a way. And that's where networking is important. If you know somebody or spoke to somebody or have made friends with somebody who can go talk to the recruiter or the hiring manager and put a name and a face with somebody in that pile of resumes, you are so far ahead. So that's why networking is important. If you do it sometimes before a job opening comes and you've built a relationship and somebody will say, yeah, when I think of something, I'll get back to you. Or you can even do it once you've applied for something. Then you go try to find the recruiter or somebody inside that company, build a quick relationship and ask them to pull you out of the pile. And like we talked about before, your sorority or fraternity connection it doesn't end at graduation. It shouldn't end at graduation. And so the networking that you can do can be through the fraternity. So you don't have to, you talked about before, like you see your resume and oh, maybe it's somebody that was in your fraternity. You don't have to wait for that to happen. One of the best networking places is to reach out to to the local chapter or the chapter in the place where you want to find a job to your fraternity or sorority. The second best place is the alumni database for your school, but smaller and a tighter connection is even better.
Totally agree. And thank you for saying that. I think all too many college students today, especially the white fraternities and sororities, they look at that fraternity or sorority membership as something they did past tense in college. And it's not, for them a lifetime experience. And that's not what we signed up for. I want to remind them what they committed to when they joined at the altar, because I remember what I said. And also, to your point, yeah, to be that connection with a much smaller circle of people is going to bring more impact than we just went to the same university. And so I really, really strongly suggest that the fraternity and sorority leaders listening can leverage that network that they have. It's literally the best networking organization on the planet, literally. So
Yeah.
please take advantage of it.
And,
Don't.
I mean, I got to tell you from my friends who have all been in Greek life, some of them are large and in charge, like they're in
Yeah,
big jobs,
yeah.
So don't ignore that.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, these are leaders in every Fortune 500 company out there. So yeah, for you to overlook that is a mistake. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, I love the fact that Gen Z is very motivated. For me, that's great as a speaker to be able to work with them because they are so motivated to fix problems and to be successful. And so I know I can always count on that with this generation. What strengths do you see with this generation that they bring to the workplace that maybe older generations are overlooking?
So interesting because, when that's the first thing that comes to my mind too, is this generation is really motivated and they're motivated specifically to make a difference. So Gen X and the generation before us, boomers, just the job and making money, that was enough motivation. But this generation really wants to make a difference. So I'm telling employers when I work with them, if you help Gen Z connect the dots between what their job is and how that helps the customer of the product of whatever the company does, and then the greater good of the world, this generation will redouble its efforts. And despite all the stuff that you read in the press, this generation are really hard workers and they have a lot of creative talent and they are the most educated generation in history so far. So they're smart, they're educated, they're creative, and they're driven. So all we have to do is recognize that. And like I said, I try to tell employers, like, check your biases at the door because this generation is amazing. And right now, Right now, they're 35% of the workforce, and then they're just gonna be a bigger part of the workforce. So you better get with the program.
Yeah, get with the program or your company's going to be extinct. It's just a
Right.
numbers game, like literally.
Totally.
Literally. So yeah, I totally agree with you. And as somebody who works with Gen Z every single day, they are the most motivated people, contrary to popular belief. They're
Yeah.
so motivated, you have no idea. And they will go through a brick wall in order to be successful. So yeah, totally agree with you, everything that you said there. You're also an employment attorney. So I'm wondering, when you put that hat on, what workplace situations should young professionals be taking seriously and actually document?
Yeah. So thankfully, most situations at work are never are not usually bad enough to rise to the level that you need a lawyer. But that doesn't mean that there aren't situations that you want to bring to the attention of HR or maybe your manager or another manager. And I guess what I would say, if I had to sum it up in one phrase, is trust your gut. So pay attention to the things that make you feel demeaned or uncomfortable. So let me give you an example. I once worked with a young woman, um, not as a lawyer, but in this part of my career, um, and she was trying to figure out whether she had a really bad work situation and she should try to escalate it or leave, or whether this is just what work was like and she should suck it up. And so when she described the situation to me, what was going on was she had a boss who would yell at her in front of the whole rest of the staff all the time. And anytime she asked for help or advice or guidance or coaching, he would make fun of her and usually in public. That's wrong. And that's something that ought to be elevated, or you should think about moving on. But let me also, so that's the kind of thing, but let me point out one misconception that a bunch of young people I've worked with seem to have when they start work. I've had several young folks complain to me that they think it's unfair that their boss is giving them work to do when their boss could easily do it themselves. That's not wrong. That's actually okay because your boss's job is to delegate stuff to you, even if it feels tactical to you, so that he can or she can free themselves up to manage the strategic work. And the ways that you learn are by doing some of the jobs that are tactical because it helps you understand kind of how the workplace works and all of the underpinnings so that you can move to the next level. So that's what I would say about situations that you should take seriously.
Totally agree. Very well done. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is that you've worked with so many executives all over the world. I'm wondering if you have noticed over time certain leadership traits that consistently predict long-term success with these executives.
Yeah. So I do a presentation that when I can get in front of early graduating seniors is probably the best time to do this. And I've spoken at a bunch of universities, and so like I said, I have a presentation where I go through three things, and so I will tell you the three things in a little bit right now. So it's trust, its skills, and its value. And so let me say just a little bit more. So first thing I said before, build trust. Build trust basically means taking ownership. Your boss needs to know that they can depend on the quality of your work and your judgment. I had a leader say to me once, all I want to make sure is that I can trust them and that they can deliver. And so in one phrase, that's what you got to do. You got to build trust. Then the second thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you're constantly building your own skills. And so right out of school, you have knowledge, right? So school teaches you an academic set of information that's knowledge. But skill is applying that knowledge in real life situations or real work situations. So you've got to continue to work on building your skills because if you see things in a bunch of different situations, your skills just burgeon. And then the last thing is you have to learn how to demonstrate your value. And that there's a lot of people, the companies are filled with people who do really good work and they just sit in their chair and they've never tried to connect the dots for anybody between what they've done and how the company has succeeded. And so you have to learn how to blow your own horn isn't quite the right phrase, but demonstrate, explain to people the connection between the work you're doing and why that creates value for the company politely, but then that predicts your long-term success because then you become a key player and people say, oh, wow, Mike is so valuable. And so we need to make sure we need to groom him for the next role. We need to make sure he's happy. We want to give him extra projects. So those are the three things that I think if you boil it down are the three most important things.
Well done. Really, really great. Now, I do love good food. I think that's my weakness over here. So the next time I happen to find myself in Portland, Oregon, is there a place I should be going for a great meal these days?
So I knew this question was coming and I love food too. So I actually am going to give you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner
All right.
suggestion. All
Nice.
right. So Portland is a foodie town. We are known for our food, but I like to eat. So for breakfast, I would send you to a place called Stepping Stone. And it's a diner, and their motto all over their menus on the front door says, "You eat here because we let you." But they are known, they make their pancakes. So they're known for their short stack of pancakes. The pancakes are all the size of a dinner plate. So you get like five dinner plate sized pancakes. That's where I would send you for breakfast. If you were still hungry, for lunch, I would send you to a new restaurant that used to be a food cart, but it's now a brick and mortar building. It's called Bang, but it's spelled with two B's, Bbang. And it's Korean street food. And they are best known for their Korean fried chicken and their fried shrimp sandwich, which are amazing. And then for dinner, I would send you to a family-run Mediterranean restaurant called Nicola's. And like I said, I really like to eat. And the reason I like this place is because they bring a piece of pita the size of a pizza and they put it on a like an elevated platform so everybody can rip off this wonderfully just fresh hot piece of pita and dip it into whatever you get. And then bonus, if you were still hungry, I would send you for a snack to Voodoo Donuts. And they make this maple donut. In fact, there's a Voodoo Donuts in the airport in Nashville.
That
So if
is.
you ever want a Voodoo Donut, you can get it there. But now I need to do back at you because I'm moving to Nashville in 6 weeks. So give me one recommendation for where I should eat as I'm settling in, please.
Okay. Well, listen, anytime you want to go and grab lunch, we can certainly make that happen in Nashville. There's no shortage of good food, and I'm happy that you're a foodie because you're coming to the right city. So yeah, the Nashville hot chicken is a must try. My favorite would be Hattie B's.
Okay.
And so there's also, anything barbecue, I think, is certainly something that you need to try. So, Martin's Barbecue, I think it would be another really great spot. So yeah, we just exist on barbecue. Yeah, I mean, it's
Excellent.
fantastic.
Okay.
It's really, really fantastic in Tennessee. So that is just completely off the charts. But yes, you're gonna have to get accustomed to Nashville hot chicken as well. And like I said, Hattie B's or even Prince. Those are two spots where you can get just fantastic Nashville hot chicken.
Excellent.
Those are
Okay.
the places that I would start with. But definitely let me know once you get to town and we'll go out to lunch and we'll
Absolutely.
make
I would
that happen.
absolutely love that. Okay.
Well, listen, this has been absolutely fantastic. So if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, maybe they want expert guidance in terms of their careers, or maybe they want to buy your book, where should they go to get all of those things?
So if you go to my website, which is peoplematterllc.com, you can get the book and you can connect with me there. Or if you just want to email me at ellen@peoplematter.com, that works. Or I'm on LinkedIn and you can find me on LinkedIn by my name, Ellen Raim.
That is fantastic. Well, Ellen, I mean, you are just a wealth of information for our college student listener. So you couldn't be a more perfect guest and a more perfect topic. And clearly, you have expert advice that people just don't get anywhere else. So I really appreciate you being on the show. I just think it's been a tremendous resource for our listeners. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This has been really fun, and I absolutely will take you up on lunch when I get to Nashville.
That sounds good. It's a great city. So we're getting full though. So I have to let people know that we're starting to get full. People are starting to catch on that this is like the it city to be. So we're getting full. I'm just putting that out there. But that being said, it's a wonderful place, and we've really enjoyed it since 2012. So yeah, happy to show you around town, and you'll love it. So
Okay.
there. All right, to our listeners, if you learned something today from Ellen, and I'm 100% sure that everybody who listened to this interview learned something, I want you to share this episode with your chapter. So, what I want you to do is grab the link, put it in a group chat for your chapter, or just share it on social media. You never know who needs to hear Ellen's advice today in terms of finding jobs with Gen Z. So, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.
Bye.